Hello, I'm Douglas Johnson, the Day Tripping Adventurer, and I just got off here at the Babylon Railroad Station. The end of the Babylon line goes all the way in from New York City Penn Station out here to Babylon. It's the last stop. Can't tell you how many times I've fallen asleep on this train. I think one's pulling in right here on this train, and woke up at this station. So today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a walk around Babylon Village. Not only is it a cool place to visit with a lot to see, it's got a lot of history, which I love, and it's also got a lot of history markers. So as I'm heading over to my first stop, let me tell you a little bit about the history of Babylon Village. A small hamlet located in Suffolk County off the Great South Bay of Long Island, New York, the area known as the Village of Babylon was originally part of the town of Huntington and was known as Huntington South. With travelers coming from the North Shore down to the Bay and others from New York City heading east, Babylon was well situated for a place to stop and rest, creating the need for stores, hotels, and services. By the early 1800s, Babylon had become a hub of activity. And then when the railroad arrived in 1867, the village became a thriving resort area, and the village of Babylon eventually incorporated in 1893. Following World War II, local tourist activity dwindled, but the post-war suburban boom provided homes for the returning veterans. With convenient train service to New York City, commuters then, just like today, found Babylon a great place to live and raise a family. But as soon as you get off the train up on that platform, the first thing you see is the Babylon High School. Now, it looks like any other high school that you'll find here on Long Island, but this school here was originally built in the 1830s. So yeah, I got some of my information wrong here. The original school was built in 1805, and it was located down on Main Street, and it was eventually relocated here in 1893. You can see its original design here in a 1910 postcard, but after decades of renovations, very little of the original building exists today. But you can find the original cornerstone displayed within the corridors of the school. I loved walking around this area because the school looks so cool, but when I get around the corner there, the architecture gets even better. So let's go check it out. Right on the corner of Grove Place and North Carroll Avenue is some of the architecture that I love to see. This is St. Joseph's Roman Catholic Church. It's built in that very classic Gothic style, but I believe this is called a Byzantine Gothic because of the big round dome here at the top. Right here below me, right there, that has a plaque on it. Let's take a read of what it has to say. To commemorate the supreme sacrifice made by Babylon's heroes. And you can see it's got a list of names. And if you look at the date down there, it says World War 1917 to 1919. I see the date July 4th, 1919. So this was probably put up just after the war. The war ended in 1918. It would have been on November 11th, 1918 that the war ended. So they had no idea that another war was coming up. So it was the World War and not the First World War, not at that time. That was a big war. My great-grandfather fought in that war. Anyway, to learn more about World War I, there's plenty of videos out there with more informative content that I can give in this short video. So let's head on to our next marker or our next stop. And I always love finding the cornerstones on these buildings. As you can see here, this is one of the office buildings for the church. And right over there is the cornerstone. It says 1932. So I believe, well, at least this building was built in 32. Another cool thing about walking here in Babylon Village is if you're into like old classic houses and architecture, sorry it's so dark, that's the sunny side, but right here, this house in front of me, it's got a sign on it right over here that says it was built in 1909, and they're all over the place, these older style homes. So I just love wandering around here. So just south of the Long Island Railroad line on Deer Park Avenue, you'll find the Conklin House. Supposedly the house was built in 1807 down there on the main street and was moved up here in 1871. So it's one of the oldest houses in the area. Yeah, this barn looks pretty old, but it's amazing like how well they've been keeping this thing up. I mean, it looks gorgeous. It's in great shape. And the story goes that in this house, Babylon got its name. Miss Conklin, a woman that had lived, she did not live in the area, she moved into the area and felt that the area had a bad reputation, and she wanted to give it a better reputation, so she decided to call it Babylon. And she said, well, this will be a new Babylon. And according to the mythology or the legend, whatever you want to call it, in one of the chimneys here, the sun put a brick that said, "In New Babylon, this house built." And, the rest is, as they say, history. So the Conklin House, one of the oldest houses you'll find here in Babylon. So right here along Deer Park Avenue, you'll find like all the shops and restaurants and bars and places. I just love walking down this street. It's got this old school feel to it. They got a meat market here. The buildings, there's a bakery across the street there. I need to try that out sometime. But the buildings, I just love the facades of these buildings. I feel like, I've gone back in time. So I just went into that bakery I saw back there. Had to get a cup of coffee. And they had so many great treats in there. Cakes and cookies, but I settled upon I had to get a cannoli. It's like one of those I just associate it with New York. It's a small one, but I don't need anything big for the walks that I do. So I'm going to enjoy this cannoli as I head south down Deer Park Avenue here. And right here we come to our next marker, down in the middle of Deer Park Avenue. And this marker reads a suffrage study club. And it's here out front of Soul Provisions. Local branch organized at 1912, the Alhambra Theater. So you have to remember, women didn't get the right to vote until 1920 with the passage of the 19th Amendment. It took a while. So until then, they had to fight for their right to vote. And that fight was known as the women's suffrage movement. And the most famous era of the suffragettes would have been during World War I, actually. They would camp out outside the White House to get President Wilson to support them. And they were doing this in the middle of the winter, and he felt so bad and so guilty that he would send coffee out to them. Whether Wilson was in support or not, well, that's up for debate, and I'll let you figure that one out. But yeah, they eventually passed that amendment in 1920, and women got the right to vote. So this is an interesting find. And not that it's a Japanese restaurant, but it's the building that the Japanese restaurant is in. The Bank of Babylon. There's a plaque over here. I always have to read every plaque. It's a plaque right here. And it says the Bank of Babylon, established in 1913. And then this building was built in 1922. And I guess these two dates answer a question that I had when I first saw the building. The first thing I saw when I walked by was over here in the corner, 1922 right here. But then when I went down further down the building and I looked at the other corner, I noticed the date was 1913. So I was confused. When was this building built? Obviously it was the Bank of Babylon, but it was established in 1913 and the building built in 1922. But yeah, Bank of Babylon, that's a cool find. And it's like a traditional, I think this is called like an empire style, but another cool feature is this little plaque right here. It's an Indian head. Yeah, I guess it has something to do with trade. So I'll do a little bit more research and I'll find out. Sorry for the audio. All right, so I just came from Deer Park Avenue. I was right down there. Came down here to Main Street. So I turned the corner, and one of the things is there's a bunch of history markers around here, which is awesome. But some of the stuff I find the most interesting, like these old buildings, like that bank I found, they don't have markers on them. Like, for example, this church. While I was doing the research of the area, I learned a little bit about this church. And the only clue that gives away the history of this church is a plaque that's on the door right here. Right there. Historical Preservation Society, circa 1870. 1870. Well, I did see houses in Los Angeles that had that on there, but that's the Historic Society thing. This place is pretty old. Let me tell you a little bit of history about this building, the First Presbyterian Church building here on Main Street. It's pretty fascinating. In 1730, a group of Christ followers joined together to become the First Presbyterian Church of Babylon, and they built a place of worship on a piece of land in West Islip. Then, the Revolutionary War came, which brought British soldiers to the area. After using the house of worship for a barracks, these soldiers tore it down in 1778 and transported the lumber to the town of Hempstead, where it was used to build military living quarters. After the war, the church was rebuilt in its current location, and this church on Main Street is the oldest building in the village of Babylon, built in 1783. And the cool thing is, with the spire being so tall, as you're driving up and down the street and you're walking around this area, it just stands out. So yeah, this is a cool building, and they need to put a history marker up here. All right, so let's move on, see what else we can find as I head over to the next history marker. The church is down there, the Presbyterian Church. This area here is weird to get to. This is the exit and entrance of the 231 freeway. So it's not like an area that you'll walk to, but there's a history marker here, so of course I'm gonna walk here. A marker for Hawley's Pond. And it was a saw and grist mill that was here between 1780 and 1886. And it was powered by Sampawams, a lot of Indian names here. Sampawams Creek. And over here, there's a little bridge and a little waterfall. And I guess the creek still kind of exists, but it's running here under the road out to the water. You'll see there's boats all here and everything out to the water that's over there. So there was a grist mill here. And then after that, I heard that that grist mill it shut down and became a toy shop. And today, it's just the mill pond. So the way it worked back in those days was you had, they didn't have electricity. So the only way to power anything was basically through water power. So on a stream or a creek, they would dam it up so that they could get a more powerful flow of water coming downhill. They would put a water mill on there, and that would power the whole factory. So yeah, grist mill. But I don't think very many people come here. So I'm glad I did. Even though the road is like right there, and you can see through these trees, cars coming in down the road over there. It's kind of really peaceful. You got the sound of the waterfall that kind of blends in with the traffic sound. And then you have this pond here filled with swans and geese and ducks. It's really nice. So here's the thing I noticed as I'm walking out of this park. There's no place to park here. The only way to get here is to walk. You got to walk across the freeway exit there, and you got to walk across the freeway exit over here, or entrance over here to get here. So if you do come to visit the village, I recommend you take that walk over here and hang out at Hawley's Pond. Anyway, off to the next marker. I came west down Main Street until I got to a street called Willow Street. I made a left. I came into the community down here. All these houses are gorgeous, by the way. It's great. Like in some of the windows, they have the signs of when these places were built, and these were all built in the mid 1800s. That's freaking awesome. But what I came here to see was right across the street here, Porter's Landing. On this site, American naval hero David Porter landed after escaping from the British. There's no more information than that. They just assume you know who David Porter is, what war it was, and what was going on. It's actually the War of 1812. And what was going on? Well, he wasn't caught by the British blockade here. He was caught down like in the Pacific Ocean, off of Valparaiso, the Battle of Valparaiso, I think it was what it's called. So he fought this battle, which is supposedly like this epic naval battle between the British and his ship, the Essex, and he lost. He was taken prisoner, and he was a prisoner as the ship sailed all the way from the Pacific down around South America, because the Panama Canal didn't exist, all the way up to here, and he was able to escape off the coast of Long Island. When he got here, and he landed, he wasn't alone, he had a couple of other people with him, and they were armed, and it was during the war, so the people here in Babylon, well, they thought he was the British, and it took him a while. He had to kind of like talk himself out of being like, in the very least killed, in the very most killed, the very least locked up. And he was eventually able to convince the people around here who he was. I'll put a couple of links down there so you can learn more about David Porter and his the battle he fought and his miraculous escape from the British. All right, so from David Porter's Landing, I continued up Willow Road. It eventually became Shore Road. I don't know when. And then I made a right on Virginia Road. That's Fire Island Avenue. And on the corner of those two streets, the next sign right there. This is Babylon Station, the original site of Babylon Station. What is Babylon Station? All through human history, the only way to communicate with anybody was by paper or flags or sounds or something like that until this guy came along, Marconi. Guglielmo Marconi was an Italian inventor, electrical engineer, and physicist known for his creation of a practical radio wave-based wireless telegraph system, crediting Marconi as the inventor of radio. And, along with Carl Ferdinand Braun, he won the 1909 Nobel Prize in Physics. During the first week of 1902, a notice was printed announcing the Jacobs Cottage on Fire Island Avenue in Babylon was being leased for 5 years by the Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company of the United States. After that, it trained operators, and it was located here until 1930 when it was moved to Rocky Point. But yeah, this is, that's the cool thing about the history of this area. Some of it is, local. Some of it is bigger, like Porter's Landing, and some of it, literally changed the world, like the Marconi station here in Babylon. So from the Marconi Telegraph Shack, came up Fire Island Avenue. Some places I wasn't intending to see. I walked by this place here, and I see the sign. It says Seaman House, circa 1840. And it's still in use. I mean, it's got a bunch of businesses inside of there. That's pretty cool, man. All right, so just north of the Seaman's house there, up Fire Island Avenue, I'm back on Main Street here, and we come to our next marker. It's the auto race sign. So the first U.S. auto race held April 14th, 1900, a 50-mile round trip from Queens to Babylon and back. That's now doing the research on this thing. It's a pretty wild story. Again, it's something else that needs its own video. But just so you know, supposedly in the intersection here, they put barrels in the street, and that was the turnaround. And at the time, 1900, this was just dirt. This really wasn't a road. And these cars, this is the early days of cars. So they had, I think it was 15 cars. I want to say 15 cars. Only 7 ended the race out of the 15. I could have the numbers wrong. But, there were steam-powered cars, there was electric cars, and there was gas cars. And the car that won was an electric car. Right now we're going through this whole thing of, electric vehicles versus gas vehicles versus hybrid vehicles. This is an age-old story. This has been going on since the dawn of the automobile. And I don't know if it was the first on Long Island or the first in the country. I'll look that up and put it down below here. So I'm standing in front of the Babylon Theater here, and right across the street is my next stop. This is on Main Street, just a little further west down from where we saw the marker for the auto race. This building here was built between 1917 and 1918, so during the Great War. And originally this was this is the village of Babylon. There is the greater town of Babylon. Supposedly this was the seat of government for the greater town of Babylon. It was also the courthouse up until 1979, and I think the seat of government until 1958. And midday here, around a little after noon, the street gets packed. I mean, it's just traffic all the way down there. But anyway, not here to see traffic. I can see traffic anywhere. Here to see this building. This looks like a classic 50s diner. That's today an Asian bistro sushi place. I have not been in there. It always stands out, and I don't know why. I think it's so cool, especially the name Fancy Lee. That's a cool name. But anyway, it's just another cool thing to see here in the village of Babylon. So we only got a couple more things to see today. The biggest one is right up there. When I say the biggest one, it's the biggest one in size anyway. So let's head on over and check it out. So as we head down to that really big area I was talking about, there's a couple places we're going to see first. The first one is the Historical Preservation Society of the Village of Babylon. This building was built around 1911, it says it on that plaque right there. But the interesting thing to see here, if you're coming by, it's a little, you'll walk right by it without knowing what it is. It's this fountain right here. Now this is a replica, it's not the original fountain. The original fountain was built in 1897 by the Women's Exchange. And they built it to be a place where people could stop and get some water, both for man and animal. Because remember, back in the day, in the 1890s, this was just dirt road, and this was way the heck out there. There wasn't many places they could stop like we can today, like coffee places and stuff like that. And an interesting thing about the Women's Exchange is that it was a society that built stores or set up shops and stores where women can go and sell the goods that they made at home. So this was a way for women to make a little bit of extra money without having to depend on a man or their husband or whatever to make money. If you're walking by, check it out. Continuing west down Main Street past the Historical Society, you come here to the Babylon Village Municipal Building. And quite honestly, I couldn't find a lot of information about this building when I was doing the research for this. But I do love this building. Every time I walk by it, I stop and it kind of catches my eye. So if you look right there, it's got the VB on the ironwork. It's the home of the Babylon Fire Department, the fire station. So right next to the municipal building, you'll find a statue of perhaps one of the most controversial residents of Babylon, and that's a statue of Robert Moses. If you're not familiar with Robert Moses, he is the one who's responsible for pretty much all of the infrastructure that we're familiar with here in New York City and Long Island. The Verrazano Narrow Bridge, the Trogsnick Bridge, the Northern State Parkway, the Southern State Parkway. And it's said that he built the most infrastructure, the most public works of any single individual since the times of the pharaohs in Egypt. That's how much he's done. If you look on a map of New York, and if you highlight all of the public works that he was responsible for, it's lines all over the map. He kind of helped build the public transportation system around New York City and Long Island. The thing was, he wasn't a fan of public transit in the sense of like trains and buses and subways. His was more geared towards cars and the automobile. So what makes him controversial is that, for example, the Southern State and the Northern State, the overpasses are too low to allow buses to pass under them. So it's believed that he did this to stop buses from carrying poor people in from the city to places like Jones Beach or out on the island where they were pretty much white communities. So yeah, even though he built a lot, he also built them in a very particular way, which may not have been the most ethical and moral thing to do. But to learn more about Robert Moses, I've put some links down in the description below. He's a fascinating character, and here it is. The western end of the village of Babylon. It's Argyle Park, or Argyle Lake. The high school is right there. The village is over there. I don't know if you can see the train coming right now. Long Island Railroad train is moving around over there. So anyway, yeah, this is Argyle Park. It's a nice big park to walk around, and today I'm going to walk a circle around the park. There's always seagulls, geese, swans. The last time I was here, I swear I saw an eagle. And then there's like a little bridge area over here. It's just a gorgeous park to hang out in. Now, there's a little bit of history here, as there's history everywhere. So Argyle Park. So originally, this was the home of a hotel, a very large hotel that was built by one of the railroad magnates, one of the early investors in the Long Island Railroad. It was a massive hotel. And then this lake and then the pond over there were built for that hotel. And here in Argyle Park, you'll find this monument, one of the biggest monuments in the area, actually. It's to commemorate the memory of Captain Joel Cook, brave soldier who served in the American Army throughout the Revolutionary War and who also recruited and commanded a company in the War of 1812. He was born in Connecticut, but he died here in Babylon in 1851. The story of this guy is kind of fascinating. So supposedly he joined the Revolutionary War in 1776, so the early days of the war. He fought, and he was 16 years old. So here in the back corner of Argyle Park, there's the train tracks, there's the lake, and way over there is Main Street and the village. And right here is a monument that is probably overlooked by all the people that walk around here. I mean, I can't guarantee that, but and this is the monument to the Cuban Giants. They were a professional black baseball team, and supposedly it was organized by the workers at the Argyle Hotel, and they were in the Black League, and they were one of the best teams in the Black League. There's a lot of history around here. Not only do we have sports history, we've got Robert Moses, World War I history, we got Revolutionary War history, we got 1812 history, we got great architecture, and just overall great things to see. As you can see, take the train to the Babylon station, you get off, and and you can have just a wonderful day here walking around the village of Babylon. As usual, I probably only scratched the surface of the architecture and the history of this area. I'm sure people will correct me or recommend more things to see. Please do. I always love seeing new things. But as always, remember to get out, explore the world around you, but stay safe and stay healthy.